Hello students, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. Today's video we are going to discuss in details about a recent tsunami that has struck the Japan. So in this video we are not only going to discuss about the current affairs related to tsunami, we are also going to discuss in details what is the geographical concept behind the tsunami, why does it happen, where does it happen generally across the globe, and what are the steps that the government of India has taken to overall reduce the impact of tsunami on the general population, or what are the steps that the India has taken to basically alert people before the tsunami wave can reach the coastline. Now before that, if we try to understand the context in which we are discussing this topic of tsunami, so tsunami waves has hit several parts of Japan just when the new year 2024 began, and it has inundated a huge coastal regions of the Japan. The urgent evacuation warning was also relayed to the local population of Japan by this provincial government, and overall the tsunami is believed to have resulted due to a 7.6 magnitude of earthquake. The 7.6 magnitude, when you talk about, we are talking about the earthquake which is recorded on a Richter scale. So 7.6 magnitude earthquake shook the country's north central part. Japan, if you understand, it is basically a collection of islands, and it has 4 main islands. So in the north central part of the island, that is where the tsunami has struck. Now Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, in a televised address, has also asked citizens in the light of the development to follow evacuation orders closely, and warned that more powerful quakes and tsunami waves might follow the initial one that the Japan has recorded. Now let us try to understand what does the term tsunami itself mean. Now coincidentally, tsunami itself is a Japanese word where it is made up of 2 different terms. The first is su and the second is nami. Su basically means harbor or the port areas, while the nami refers to a giant sea wave. Thus, tsunami basically means such kind of giant sea wave which is able to reach and impact significantly the harbor parts of the Japan or harbor parts of the any region. So basically, it is not a single wave. Whenever tsunami forms, basically we observe a series of waves arriving one after another within a time interval of few minutes, and then they are largely a result of earthquake which happens below the ocean surface, or also maybe due to the volcanic eruption that might trigger the tsunami. The tsunami waves do not resemble normal undersea currents or sea waves because their wavelength is far longer. The general wavelength of tsunami talk about can stretch all the way up to 100 to 200 kilometers also. Thus, rather than appearing as a breaking wave, when you talk about breaking waves, for example, if you go in the coastal areas, in beach areas, due to the movement of winds, you will see that waves crashes, breaks, and then further reaches at the shore. So it rather than appearing like that kind of breaking wave, a tsunami may instead initially resemble a rapidly rising tide. Because when the tsunami happens, first of all, water level recedes at a very fast rate away from the coast. That resembles a low tide kind of situation. And when the tsunami waves come for the first time, it resembles a high tide because a high rising water, a wall of water is there that is approaching the coast. So low tide followed by high tide. That is how generally the overall appearance of the tsunami waves looks like. And it is for this exact reason tsunami waves are often referred to as tidal waves as well. However, this point has been contested by many geographers because they see that by comparing tsunami waves to tidal waves, we are basically decreasing overall the impact and the tremendous energy that tsunami wave carries with itself, which is far higher than any normal tidal waves which are created due to the gravitational pull of the sun and moon. Now, if you refer to the causes of tsunami, by studying this data, we can understand that almost 72% of the tsunami that occurs across the world, 72% of them is a direct result of undersea earthquake. About 10% of tsunami occurs due to landslides. Landslides can be both at the ocean bed or even in the coastal regions as well. Then 5% of tsunami is a direct result of volcanic eruption. About 2% of tsunami is atmospheric genesis due to the strong movement of the winds, or also we talk about the meteoritic impact that happens when any meteorite falls down on the earth's surface, especially in the ocean or sea. And 11% of tsunami is something that we cannot trace exact source of. Now, if we talk about the major or predominant factor behind tsunami, it is obviously earthquake. So basically, when an earthquake takes place, especially below or under the sea, a large chunk of the ocean floor suddenly gets displaced and disturbed. Due to this sudden movement of the ocean floor in upward or downward direction, there is a sudden displacement of a large volume of water. Now, obviously, if you try to understand, if you measure the depth of the ocean bed from the ocean surface, on the average around the world, it is about 6 to 8 kilometers. Thus, whenever any disturbance happens on the ocean bed, this 6 to 8 kilometer huge thickness of water, millions and millions, we can say even billions and billions of liters of water is there, that is suddenly displaced in upward and downward direction. This displacement causes a emergence or a rise of a ripple-like wave, which we call as a tsunami wave. On the other hand, the second predominant region, that is the volcanic eruption, same thing happens if volcano erupts below the ocean. Due to sudden eruption of such a huge amount or huge volume of magma or lava, it also causes a rapid displacement of the water around it, and the water can then convert, or water can then lead to generation of a huge wave, which we can call as the tsunami wave. Same for the third major factor, that is the landslides. During a submarine landslides, because if you talk about the ocean bed, it is not a homogeneous surface. Ocean bed itself is having very heterogeneous characteristic, where you have a lot of valleys are there, where a lot of ocean, a lot of mountains are there, which are referred as sea mounts, geos and all that. So whenever there is this landslide that happen in the submarine areas due to the displacement of sediments along these mountains, sea mountains especially, it also causes a sudden displacement of the water volume around it because of the huge or large scale movement of the sediments on the ocean floor. And this can also, by the same mechanism, can cause displacement of water, giving rise to ripple-like tsunami waves. Now, if we talk about overall the regions behind tsunami, we have discussed it can be either due to earthquake, or it can be due to the volcanism, or it can be due to the landslides. Now, the predominant reason why these phenomena themselves occur can be associated with the concept of plate tectonics. Now, if you have read the geography, you know that the entire earth is divided into several plates, major plates, minor plates, and even microplates. And whenever any plate or two plates move related to each other, they either are moving away from each other, which is called as divergence, or two plates might move toward each other, which is called as convergence, which also leads to subduction. And two plates can neither move toward each other nor away from each other, the simply sliding along common boundary, that is called as transverse plate movement. So if we encounter or we try to examine the main kind of plate movement responsible for development of tsunami waves, it comes out to be subduction. Subduction, in simple term, can be referred as the sinking of a denser plate below the lighter oceanic plate, or lighter, we can say, continental plate. Thus, whenever one plate sinks below the other, it goes down. Due to this downward movement, the part of sea floor is suddenly snaps, or suddenly basically it is forced in the upward direction as the tension is released. And as this part of sea floor snaps in the upward direction, the entire volume, entire column of seawater that is resting of this is suddenly jerked or pushed in the upward direction toward the surface. Thus, it creates an enormous bulge. Once this enormous bulge is created, the force of gravitation will kick in and it will try to pull the surface water of the ocean back. So we'll have the upward movement followed by the downward movement. Upward movement is caused by the sudden springing of the seafloor. Downward movement is caused by the gravitational pull of the earth itself. So as the water flattens out due to this sudden displacement of the huge amount of water, giant ripples are created which race in the outer direction. This we can also understand from the analogy that if you are throwing a small piece of rock in a still water, calm water of, let us say, lake, the point of impact where the rock falls on the surface is from where you see the ripple-like waves that are generating, is spreading in all the directions. Tsunami is something that can also be considered to be a similar kind of movement, but happening at a much larger scale. So unlike ocean-wide tsunamis that is caused by some earthquakes, tsunamis generated by non-seismic mechanisms usually dissipate very, very quickly and rarely affect coastlines far from the source area. So mostly when you come across any news about tsunami striking or affecting the coastal areas, you can understand that it must be a very significant seismic event that might have triggered such kind of tsunami. If we try to examine and understand the details of the mechanism of tsunami, we can divide into multiple steps or multiple phases. In first phase, what is happening here? We are having a seismic event that might be a result of subduction. Due to the seismic event, a huge volume of water gets displaced. As the water gets displaced, we have the ripple-like waves that rushes toward the coast. But before that, since the plate is going in the downward direction, it creates also a trench, and also the water is bulging in the upward direction. So due to these two forces, first of all, water will be pulled away from the coast. Then the ripple-like waves further moves toward the coast, where its height keep on increasing as it moves toward the coast. The reason is because the water becomes shallower and shallower toward the coast. So that is how we can understand the mechanism of tsunami. If you look at the characteristics, a general characteristic of tsunami wave, obviously each of the tsunami waves is different, but on average, if we try to understand its properties, we can say that the velocity of tsunami wave exactly from the point of origin, or at the point of origin, is somewhere near the range of 800 kilometers per hour, that is roughly 500 miles per hour. Obviously, near the coast, there is a phenomena of wave shoaling, which compresses the wave, and thus due to the compression, the speed decreases to somewhere about 80 to 100 kilometers per hour. Second properties is wavelength. So in the open ocean, the tsunami wavelength can be stretched all the way up to 200 kilometers. But as the wave reaches toward the coast, again due to the compression of waves, the wave height is increasing, but wavelength reduces to mere 20 kilometers. A third point is, if you look at the wave frequency, a large tsunami may feature multiple waves arriving over a period of hours with significant time between each of the wave crest. It is often difficult for people to recognize a tsunami in the open ocean. The reason is again simple, because in the open ocean, the wavelength of tsunami is quite larger, and thus the overall wave height is very less. It might be ranging in 1 to 2 feet, and that is something which seems to be a very common or general wave that is generated also because of the movement of winds. So it is due to this reason the actual the appearance of tsunami is only observed near the coastal areas. So as with earthquakes, several attempts have been made to set up scales of tsunami intensity or magnitude to allow comparison between different events, but it has not been very successful. Now, most of the tsunami that occurs across the world, it happens in the region that is called as ring of fire. Ring of fire basically is a horseshoe shaped kind of ring that basically is situated across or along the entire Pacific coast, in the west toward South America, North America, and in the east toward Australia and Eurasia. So 90% of world's earthquake occurs along the ring of fire. And since earthquake is a predominant region behind the tsunami, the occurrence of tsunami is also highest here. There are subduction zones that is associated with deep sea trenches along Chile, Alaska, Japan, and Indonesia, because Pacific plate being denser subducts along the other continental plates which are lighter. So Pacific plate is subducting below South American plate. It is subducting below the North American plate. It is also subducting below what we can call as the upper side. We have the Arctic plate, then we have the Eurasian plate, then we have the Indo-Australian plate. So as you can see on this particular map, right from the South America going all the way up to North America, then further to the Aleutian island chains, then further to the Kuril Islands of Russia, then to Japan, Philippines, Indonesia, and all the way up to New Zealand, we are having a subduction of the Pacific plate, and thus whenever it happens, whenever this subduction generates a high magnitude earthquake, it obviously can trigger tsunami. Now, case of Japan becomes very interesting here, because Japan is a country that is situated not at the junction of two plates, but it is situated at junction of three plates. So basically, in the eastern side of Japan, we have Eurasian plate. In the western side, we have Eurasian plate. In the east, we have the Pacific plate, and in the south, we have the Philippine Sea plate. So whenever any plates move with relative to each other, Japan experiences phenomena like volcanic eruption, earthquakes, as well as tsunami. So this is the reason why Japan has more than 200 earthquake events, seismic events within a single year. Now, the most recent tsunami that we have experienced in India is what we can call as December 26 tsunami of 2004. This tsunami also was a result of sudden subduction, as you can see from the map here, sudden subduction of Indo-Australian plate below a microplate that is referred as Burma plate. Burma is the old name of Myanmar. So, for almost a length of 1,300 meters, the Indo-Australian plate subducted below the lighter Burmese plate, and this resulted into earthquake, which experts believe to be the third highest magnitude of earthquake that we have recorded since 1900, year 1900. And this significant earthquake that was having a magnitude of almost 9.1 on the Richter scale, that originated near the Sumatra, that is the island here, as you can see, Sumatra island of Indonesia. And this region, as you can see here, is where we have the focus or epicenter of the earthquake, and this caused a sudden development of a gigantic tsunami waves, and overall it has happened over 30 kilometers below the ocean floor. So due to this sudden tsunami of 2004, a lot of changes were made, and thus the catastrophic tsunami, we can say, highlighted the reality that tsunami disaster also happen outside of the Pacific. Mostly, since most of tsunamis, more than 80-90% of tsunami till then had occurred in the Pacific Ocean, most of the world or most of the countries were largely focusing upon the Pacific Ocean. So this changed after December 26, 2004, and thus it also created a global awareness as well as motivation to establish tsunami warning and mitigation systems around the world to ensure a tragedy like this never happens again, because a lot of lives were lost which would have been which could have been prevented if there was a complete more awareness about the occurrences of tsunami and general understanding about the tsunami. So today we talk about national tsunami warning centers have been established in countries in the Indian Ocean region as part of the larger Indian Ocean tsunami warning and mitigation system, which is led by 3 countries: Australia, India and Indonesia. So that is all about the tsunami, the recent occurrences, why it happens, how does it happen, and where does it happen, all the points we have discussed in this particular video. That is all for this video. Thank you very much.